Growing up, I used to hear the saying, when you're going through, pray about it, give it to God. But God likes to work through people as well too. And he can work through your blended family by having the space and the communication.
Brandon D. Campbell is an entrepreneur, mentor, and author recognized for his business leadership and community impact. A Little Rock native with Pine Bluff roots, he spent 17 years building ventures across media, fashion, and economic development, including workforce initiatives in Pine Bluff. Brandon's career began at WWE and founding the Little Rock Fashion Week.
Some of my first interactions in entrepreneurship was in the city of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So I had a lot of connections, met a lot of people, and some of my biggest support system was here in Pine Bluff. And a little known fact that a lot of people don't know, Pine Bluff per capita has the most talent than any place I've ever been to. And when you're working in the fashion industry, which I was at the time, you come across so many talented models. That tells you a lot about the Pine Bluff area.
He's the author of Oh Brother, My Brother, inspired by his blended family experience and sharing a powerful message. Strong communities start with how we raise and unite our young people.
So you take a child who is just experienced trauma from abandonment or neglect. Oftentimes as kids, we internalize that and we try to bring meaning to what we've experienced. The experience that I had in the dialogue that I was creating was one that said that my dad doesn't like me. I'm not lovable. That can create a scarcity type of mentality where you're not just living, you're just surviving. And when you have that type of mindset, that leads to some of those behaviors where at the end of the day, you're trying to survive, but it can be destructive at the same time, more likely to lead to some emotional diseases, which are mental health diseases or disorders such as depression, anxiety, personality disorders as well. When you have a stable foundation in the house, who's that going to impact? It's also going to impact your community as well too, in many different ways. When your college is doing a great job of recruiting talented individuals like yourself to be here, you're retaining them. They don't have to go back to California to look for work or go back to New York or Texas or any place like that, because there's a community of love, there's a community of support and investment. Who would want to leave that? With that, it's going to create more job opportunities because you don't have the brain drain, right? You don't have the shrinkage. And so from an economic development and community development standpoint, strong families, they're the backbone to community and economic development and the success of that community as well.
What's up, y'all? I'm A'Kazonna. I am a Pine Bluff native attending our local HBCU, and this is Rebuilding the Bluff. Today, I'm here with Mr. Brandon D. Campbell. So, Mr. Campbell, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Well, I like to start with why I even exist in the first place. And I'm someone who is driven by my 4 I's: impact, inclusion, innovation, and inspiration. And my purpose in life is to utilize my skills and my talents to build doors or open the doors for many different people, especially those from underserved communities, so that they can have a more socially mobile life and they can see their dreams come into fruition. And I am someone who is an inventive entrepreneur, consultant, mindful mentor, and an author of a new children's book called Oh Brother, My Brother, a story of 2 half-brothers growing up in a blended family as they go through life trying to understand what brotherhood may look like to them while trying to navigate their identities and ways that they can bond and also heal at the same time. And what I'm mostly about is being a loving father. I love being a dad. I'm a girl dad, and I'm a husband as well too. My career has spanned many different areas such as entertainment, media, fashion. But in the end, I've always put people first. And I'm very excited about the work that I've done, where I've helped businesses, nonprofits, and communities gain well over $15 million in capital to support many different initiatives in the areas of community and economic development. And just now, as being an author of this book, Oh Brother, My Brother, this is a work for me that can help benefit the lives of others, which is my purpose.
So when did you realize the person you are today is who you wanted to be?
As a little boy growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, in a blended family with different siblings, we all had different dads as well too. I've always imagined a life where I would be a father and I would be a husband and have some influence on my family dynamic. We can't choose how we enter the world, and we can't choose our families or the structure. However, we are responsible for our choices, as an adult. And so I saw becoming an adult as an opportunity for me to make two of the best decisions that I believe a person could ever make, and that is who I choose to mate with and who I choose to have a family with. But I was a dreamer. I've always, wondered, who I will become, but always left space and flexibility to be open to becoming who I am today. I knew I was going to be a father. I knew I was going to have at least one daughter, but now I have all three daughters, so I'm a girl dad. But I knew I was going to be successful. I knew I wanted to be somebody. But as life has taken me, I've always learned to leave space to become the person I am today. I wanted to be a writer. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell stories. And my entire career, in a sense, have been telling stories that inspire, uplift, especially underserved communities. So from working in the entertainment industry, being a writer, I've always injected my own personal life experiences, that kind of tell stories that reflect an experience living in a blended family. And I wanted to always do something that resonated with them. And so I'm just blessed today to be an author of that book, Oh Brother, My Brother.
So how is Pine Bluff, Arkansas connected to your story?
Pine Bluff is near and dear to me. I love Pine Bluff. My paternal side of my family, my dad's side, my great grandmother, Rosie Mack, was from Pine Bluff. She died nearly about 10 years ago. She was 101 years old. And so my dad's side of the family is from Pine Bluff, and my mom's side of my family lived in Pine Bluff as well. So via the Arkansas Delta, so they're from Dumas and Gould and McGee, and they migrated north for better opportunities. And so they started in Pine Bluff after leaving Dumas, Arkansas. Then they migrated to Little Rock, Arkansas. And so those are some ways that I'm connected to Pine Bluff. But then also just growing up in Little Rock, you would just hear all these fascinating stories about Pine Bluff. And Pine Bluff, believe it or not, was the place where the adults in Little Rock would go to over the weekend to go hang out. PJs, that was a happening spot. And I just couldn't wait to become a big person where I can go to PJs at some point, because that's where all my aunts were going over the weekend. And then fast forward, I had went away to college, went to the University of Iowa, and lived in New York and LA, worked as a producer in the entertainment industry. But I returned to Little Rock to start the Little Rock Fashion Week. And some of my first interactions in entrepreneurship was in the city of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So I had a lot of connections, met a lot of people, and some of my biggest support system was here in Pine Bluff. And a little known fact that a lot of people don't know, and that is Pine Bluff per capita has the most talent than any place I've ever been to. And when you're working in the fashion industry, which I was at the time, you come across so many talented models. That tells you a lot about the Pine Bluff area.
On campus, we have this modeling group called Black Essence. So I feel like they are like really talented.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Black Essence, they were very popular back in the day. Some of my best models came from that group as well. So that's interesting. And I'm happy to see that they're still in existence today.
But I know you said that you always like wanted to be a husband and have kids, but what inspired your focus on strengthening families, especially blended families, and why does this matter now?
I grew up in a blended family, single mom, 4 other siblings. We had different dads. I knew what it was like growing up, with different questions that I had, and there wasn't a space to have those deep conversations, mainly because, my mom, she worked a lot as a single mom, and my father, who wasn't physically present in the house as well. So I had all these questions that I had, which oftentimes created my own narratives of who I am as a person and where am I going, and trying to find out my own identity. And knowing that there are so many other people in this country with those similar experiences, I wanted to devote my talents and my efforts in helping to tell those types of stories, but also tell it from more of a positive lens, but also a realistic lens as well too. We're living in a society where blended families are more normal today. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, where, when you think of the divorce rates that we have, but also, people are choosing to have children without being married, and that's their prerogative. And so I wanted to create a resource that allows for the space where you can have, communications and conversations that I truly believe is going to help bring family closer together and bond, while at the same time help to heal from some of that trauma that is related to abandonment, which sometimes occur when you are growing up in a house where you don't have both parents in it. And so you may experience some emotional and physical abandonment, which then most likely leads to some maladaptive, self-destructive behaviors. And so that's why, creating and writing Oh Brother, My Brother was very important, to have a platform or avenue so these discussions can happen, where you have a child who sits down with his mom and also his dad and read this story, and they're bonding while reading the story. But then after each chapter, there's questions that causes for them to have discussion about the book, while also help kind of push them forward and having discussions about their own relationship and about their child, and the child asking questions about their mom, because that to me is very important.
Do you feel like you would still be in the direction of life that you're in now if you didn't grow up in a blended family?
I don't think so. I don't think that I would be who I am today. And I love who I am today. And I have a lot of pride for who I am today and where I came from. Growing up in a blended family, I felt this sense of shame because there were gaps in my story. I didn't have that relationship or the family structure that I would see watching one of my favorite shows at the time, The Cosby Show. And so I internalized that. And because I internalized that and didn't have the space to have those type of conversations, it made me feel, in a sense, unworthy. And so by me knowing that that was my experience, I truly believe that there's others who had that same experience. And so by doing the work on myself and doing the work on healing and self-reflection, but also building and strengthening those relationships with my mom and my dad, some of my best friends, my mom and my dad, love them to death. It has helped me be the person who I am today as well. So I have no regrets for my background and where I come from, but I want to utilize my talents and my work in a way so that little boys who look like me, growing up in a blended family, have siblings, don't have to feel that void, so to speak, in their own identities.
I've also grew up with a single mom, having 2 other older siblings. So like, I feel as if it shaped me, like in a way I had to like learn to be this person that I am today. Now that my mom is married, it's like, it's making me a better person. Like I was already becoming who I am, but it made me better having a father figure on my side. So yeah.
That's awesome, because that what that did was to bring stability into your life. And stability is crucial for a child at any age. And to have someone that you can connect with and be that figure in your life, it also changes the trajectory of your life. And the data backs that up, that a strong family bond, as well as 2 parents in the household, leads to success in education.
Having support.
Yeah, having support, but also a feeling of self-worth and confidence as well too. And so you think about those, even when you think about your own life, and I think about mine, but those individuals who growing up in a blended family that lack that stability, that can create a scarcity type of mentality where you're not just living, you're just surviving. And when you have that type of mindset, that leads to some of those behaviors where at the end of the day, you're trying to survive, but it can be destructive at the same time, more likely to lead to some emotional diseases, which are mental health diseases or disorders such as depression, anxiety, personality disorders as well. When you have a stable foundation in the house, who's that going to impact? That's also going to impact your community as well too, in many different ways. So if you go and you have your father, if you go and be successful, right, and you stay here in Pine Bluff, and now you get a good paying job, you have a family, and you instill that same type of structure and that connectedness to them, that's helping rebuild your own community and your environment, because what you're receiving, you're also putting it back out from an economic development standpoint, also community standpoint, because you need those dollars to help infuse capital, to help build the infrastructure around in the community to attract and bring jobs and bring more talented people and retain them here in the Pine Bluff community.
My next question is, from your perspective, what unique challenges do blended families face in communities like Pine Bluff?
In underserved communities, it's more likely what a blended family looks like is there's a single mom in the house, children, maybe they're half brothers and sisters, but we don't believe in half siblings. They're siblings, they're brother and sister. It does not look like the Brady Bunch. Oftentimes, it does not have that happy ending, unfortunately. And so there's financial stress because you may have that single parent who is responsible for the finances and taking care of their children. And where you have financial stress, that leads to emotional stress. But it's cyclical. One impacts the other. Now you're thinking about communities that are disconnected, communities that may have one caregiver not present in the house. This is very important here because psychologists say that the most important time in a person's life, not just any child, but a person's life, is between the ages of newborn to 3. During that time period, that's when a child is developing their limbic system. The limbic system of the brain, your nervous system, helps with regulating emotions, also helps you with survival. During that time period, a child, who has both parents there or they're getting their needs met, that is providing a secure attachment style for that child. But what sometimes can happen in an underserved, blended family community or household, you have a caregiver who may be not as physically present or emotionally present. When that baby is crying, this is just culturally what we've been taught, and that is, let that baby cry. No, that baby is crying because they have a specific need that needs to be met. And so when we allow that baby to cry, that baby is trying to survive. See, all they know is that I'm trying to survive. So that baby is trying to eat, and their baby needs a caregiver to help and support. So that's a traumatic experience for a child, which then in itself could then lead to an outlook of scarcity, that my needs aren't being met emotionally, physically, also from a secure standpoint as well too, because a child between 0 and 3, they're afraid. You think about it, I think about a child who's crying because the child is sleepy. Mm-hmm. Why is the child crying? Because they're sleepy. We don't cry when we're sleepy because a child doesn't know if she is going to even survive. All they know is probably being inside the womb. So to close your eyes is very scary, probably for that child. And so during that time period, the more love and more attention that we give to a child, that's why the data backs this up. The mom who is able to stay at home, and unfortunately in underserved communities, a mom oftentimes can't take 2 years off from work to be a stay-at-home mom to be for their child, which is some of the most important years of his or her life. And so when you have that, from 0 to 3, now a child comes out of that from 4 to, let's say, 12 years of age, having experienced that trauma. Now it's important for their development that the mom or the dad is there to really pour into that child and to show up for that child, and it creates more dialogue and conversation and bond with that child. And so that's why I wrote the book, Oh Brother, My Brother, to help nip some of the effects of childhood trauma, which may likely occur later on in life. So you take a child who is, just experienced trauma from abandonment or neglect, and oftentimes as kids, we internalize that, and we try to bring meaning to what we've experienced. And I can speak even from experience. The experience that I had and the dialogue that I was creating was one that said that my dad doesn't like me. I'm not lovable. How come my life doesn't look like what I'm seeing in television, right? So that means that I'm less than. And so growing up, you're getting bussed out to these these big, beautiful schools with children who, whose family structure doesn't look like yours. For me, it was internalizing that what I have isn't good enough. So then that creates this dialogue that can permeate itself throughout a person's life. And so by having a parent coming in early on, reading a book, bonding with that child, now asking them questions to learn about them, and the child asking questions to learn about their mom or about the situation between mom and dad and why my life looks like that, it leaves space for additional bonding, secure attachment style, where the child isn't overly anxious when someone leaves the house, which also creates an attachment style in the relationships that they have too later on in life, with their mates. This is a way to heal the child early on, while at the same time, a mom or a dad can see themselves in their child and start beginning the healing process, because they're having conversations that they probably wish that they had with their mom and dad, and it's helping the mom and the dad and the child to be healing side by side.
What are some practical strategies or mindsets blended families can adopt to build unity, trust, and resilience?
Yep. That's why I wrote the book. I would say, Oh Brother, My Brother is a great resource for parents to strengthen their families in the bond, and it's a practical tool. Also, there's practical ways for individuals to really strengthen the bonds and strengthen the connection within their own blended family. And I believe it starts with how you would want someone to show up for you, and the type of friendship that you will want to have with someone else. You can have that with yourself. And so practical, I would say grace, right? Giving yourself grace. Also developing boundaries. And what are your no's, and what does that look like? But in a blended family, we have to give people the space to say no if they don't want to participate, right, in the family cookout. But also developing spaces where emotional dialogue is happening. Growing up, I used to hear the saying, when you're going through, pray about it. Give it to God. But God likes to work through people as well too. And he can work through your blended family by having the space and the communication. Also, I believe in therapy. I believe connecting with a mental health professional can go a long way in developing a strong, secure, blended family. And we have to understand that a lot of what we see and what we do, oftentimes these behaviors, these are generational. So you got to give it grace. It's going to take time, but with love and patience, I believe that our blended families can be strong.
When you were talking about grace, it reminded me of me and my mom's bond. It's always been like a good bond, but like it became stronger once she got married. It's just us here, but it just made us closer. Our bond got closer when she got married.
That's very interesting, because that goes back to stability.
Mm-hmm.
A household that has stability, what you will more likely see is one that there's a lot more communication, but also when there's stability inside of that house, it leaves space for a child or a caregiver to be creative in their thinking. It alleviates some of the stress and the burden, which creates a better life for everybody around. So there are times growing up where, I remember we had gotten evicted from an apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. And on the lease, you're only supposed to have no more than 3 people living there. But it was my mom and my 5 other siblings. And so we eventually got evicted because they found out that my mom had too many children in the house. And so there are times that my mom, who's very strong, I get a lot of my strength from her, she didn't talk about it. She just dealt with it. Mm-hmm. And she didn't teach us that that's how you're supposed to be when you're going through a struggle, especially of instability. But that's something that earlier in my life, I had internalized that where when I struggled or went through some things, I didn't talk to people about it. And so I believe that when you have stability, you take away some of the stressors, financial, emotional, while at the same time, you can feel free and you can trust that you can be open with the people around you, which then is going to create a more deeper connection and bond, and shows that you're not in it by yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes in a blended family, you feel alone. I felt alone a lot growing up in my household as a kid. But when you have that stability and you take away some of those stressors, that also impacts the community, because the community doesn't have to use as many resources to supplement from a standpoint of housing. That takes a lot of pressure off of the resources for housing, from crime that you see oftentimes, that instability, that lack of security, that scarcity type of mentality. The data backs that up. When you see that, a lot of it goes back to the foundation, and that is a lack of connectedness in the family, or at least strong family bond. And so I say that when you're broke financially, and you're broke from an infrastructure standpoint as well too. And when you see underserved communities, unfortunately, there's brokenness that occurred in their own family, in the dynamics or the structure. That's the foundation. Now, that can more likely lead to broke financially and also broken in your community, where there's a sense of not being of high quality for yourself, right? So if you're someone who experienced that abandonment from not having a caregiver in the house, and you look outside of your window, which I experienced looking outside the window, living in the projects in Little Rock, where trash wasn't being picked up like I would have liked for it to be, right? Or you see broken glass everywhere. There was a sand park that I grew up in, and it had broken glass in there. And I remember my mom would say, "Don't go to the sand park ever. Don't ever go to the sand park." That's because it was broken glass and degradation all around. But then when you look out in our community, there was a lot of broken families. We were broken as well too. And so we were poor. As well. And so, by strengthening the families, it helps with taking away some of those financial and emotional stress, which then can lead to more social mobility, which then helps your community or your city to invest in other avenues within your community that's going to beautify or improve your community. So when you're thinking about, like a place like Pine Bluff, if the family is strengthened, it's going to more likely lead to better education, right? People are going to excel in their education because there's stability now, right? And you probably can attest to this because you're doing incredible as a student currently. And that occurred, after you experiencing that stability. So imagine a community in a world where that stability is here. Now the test scores are improving. Now we're getting the skill set to go and compete for, higher paying jobs. Which if you're getting higher paying jobs, now you're investing back into the infrastructure of your city, of your community. It's economic and community development. And what happens with that is when your college is doing a great job of recruiting talented individuals like yourself to be here, you're retaining them as well too. They don't have to go back to California to look for work or go back to New York or Texas or any place like that, because there's a community of love, there's a community of support and investment. Who would want to leave that?
Growing up, well, of course, as a kid, you don't really know what's going on unless you just know it like that. Yeah. But growing up, you just look back and you realize dang, I went through this, but you never just really just know you struggle until you older. And I feel that's when you just realize a lot more. And that's what I realized, because I wasn't 7 years old, oh, I'm struggling, going to school thinking I'm struggling. It was when I got older and I look back, I realized that.
Mm-hmm. The struggle is generational. It was passed down to you. Mm-hmm. And no parent wakes up every day, no matter what the circumstance, says that I'm struggling. I'm going to make sure that my kids struggle. No, it's not. It's generational. And oftentimes it is the response to that trauma. Some of the trauma that kids experience is security. So they develop a scarcity mentality if that goes unresolved or unchecked. And they're learning behavior patterns from their caregiver. What they could be learning is that this is normal. This is how life's supposed to be. No one taught me, so I'm not going to teach you. And too often we are left to fend for ourselves and survive on our own, which a secure, strong family and a belief system that is not going to happen for my child, it won't happen.
In your view, how can local institutions like schools, churches, nonprofits, and media platforms support healthier family structures in communities that have historically been overlooked?
This is very important, because when we think of what's happening in communities, especially underserved communities, where there's a lot of brokenness, and we're seeing crime rates escalate, we're seeing the degradation of our infrastructure and our community education rates. The reason why a lot of this is happening is trauma responses, I believe. When you experience trauma as a child and you learn not how to regulate your emotions or emotional intelligence because it's not being taught, or you're not getting that bond.
You reacted.
Yeah, so you're reacting. So what we're seeing is kids, young people, adults who are broken, and they are having traumatic responses, trying to really just to survive. They're fight or flight. And in order to survive is to fight. So when they go into the community, someone steps on their shoes, or they're in a relationship and they have an anxious attachment style, and something doesn't happen the way that they want it to happen, they react violently, right? They don't see the hope that families who are secure and have stability to believe that their life is going to be great. The institution that's there, and these are schools, these are police departments, the businesses that are there, city government. It's important to cross-collaborate. And this is something from even back, in my economic development days and doing work here in Pine Bluff and collaborating on developing tech economic development here in Pine Bluff. That's something that I preached, and helped with galvanizing leadership in all those different areas to be working together to experience a common goal. So you have to have the cross collaboration. Also, I believe that it's important for schools to normalize diverse families and diverse family dynamics. Also for the church to be involved as well too, by having programming that is inclusive to all. But then also, I believe that utilizing platforms such as this to tell positive stories about relationships and positive stories about great families, right? And it may not happen overnight to change the local news from leading the first 30 seconds of the broadcast of a murder that took place down the street. However, with social media and taking ownership of our own platforms, we can tell the right type of stories and positive stories and showcase to the next generation what real love within a family looks like, which then going to permeate to what love looks like in your own relationships as well too.
My last question is, if Pine Bluff embraced a culture of stronger, more connected families, what changes do you believe we would see over the decade?
Well, it'll get back to being the mecca of rural Arkansas, where individuals from poorer places, like my family did, looking for opportunity, and they land in Pine Bluff. They choose Pine Bluff. You'll see crime rate drop. You'll see the test scores increase. You'll see children reading on their grade levels. We'll see these incredible students that come from all over America to choose UAPB to go to school. We'll see them stay here, because with that, it's going to create more job opportunities, because you don't have the brain drain, right? You don't have the shrinkage. And so, from an economic development and community development standpoint, strong families, they're the backbone to community and economic development and the success of that community as well too.
I feel as if my family that I have, my mom and my stepdad, is strong, and I feel like it's inspiring to me to make me want to go harder in life and be successful, because both my mom and stepdad, they both encourage me to just, if you want something, go for it. Don't think about what other people have to say or anything like that. I feel like the bond that we have as a family is very inspiring.
That's awesome. And if we're talking about building a community and building Pine Bluff, we have to build the family. We have to connect. We have to love on each other, just like our grandparents used to instill in us growing up. My grandmother, for one, was someone who was big on family. That's where a lot of it comes from for me. She would just call randomly and say, have you talked to your cousin? If you're visiting, Chicago, she'll call you and tell you, hey, your cousins or your uncle lives there. Reach out to them. But it was this connectedness that we had, that by having that connection, it built a sense of pride within you and confidence. And so that's why I believe that I have the success that I have. It's because of the bonding that I've done with my grandmother and my mom and my dad. Yeah, I came from some brokenness, right? But guess what? I didn't have a say in that brokenness, but I have a say in the security that I have today and my children have today and beyond.
Well, Mr. Campbell, this was a great interview. Could you tell us where we can find you and the link or information for your book?
Yeah, you can go to brandondcampbell.com, subscribe to my e-newsletter. Also, you can buy the book there and you can go anywhere. The book is available everywhere. You can also find me all over social media, and I most definitely want to connect more with the fine people in this community.
The two takeaways that you can get from this interview are that stable families create stable communities and that there are practical strategies that help blended families survive and thrive. Don't forget to check out Mr. Brandon D. Campbell's book, Oh Brother, My Brother. I am Akazonna, and see you guys next time on Rebuilding the Bluff.